Ah yes, Fallout, one of the greatest IPs in gaming. But despite the fact Fallout 4 sold over 20 million copies, I can't shake the fact that it feels so Disney. Which makes me wonder, what if Fallout 4 was brutal? And no, I don't mean gory or vulgar or erotic. Which yeah, I mean that's cool too, you know, we'll keep that. But what I mean is dark. Here, let me explain. Fallout 4 is a great game. It is. It's almost, what, like a decade old? And I can still come back to it and have a good time. I mean, it has all the right ingredients, from the exploration to the loot reward system. Not to mention the gunplay, which is finally enjoyable. Started on that base building. I mean, Todd Howard is just a genius. I mean, he does know he's the greatest human beings who ever exist. Look, the point is, Fallout 4 isn't a bad game, but despite everything that it does correct, it just doesn't feel like a Fallout game. And to truly understand what I mean by that, we need to go back to the beginning. This is me. And a few years after this video was taken, I would get into gaming. Man, I'm talking Metal Gear Solid, GoldenEye, Fusion Frenzy, GTA 3, Halo. I was part of the golden age of gaming. I mean, we had it all, man, and the future looked bright. But despite having all of these legendary games at my fingertips, there was one game in particular that stood out the most: Fallout.
War never changes.
War never changes. These words would live rent-free in my head for years. And no, I don't mean the way Nate says it in the bathroom mirror. I mean the way Ron Perlman says it, as if reading an obituary at Mankind's funeral. The first time I booted up Fallout 2, I was met with this scene, with the vault door opening, and the inhabitants waving in a friendly manner before getting mowed down by these guys wielding miniguns. This scene set a tone that would persist throughout the entire game. It was real. It was dark. It was brutal. These old Fallout games weren't just some joke about a futuristic 50s nuclear apocalypse. They were a true imagining of some Mad Max wasteland with a side of nostalgia. Even the wacky humor that presented itself was embedded within this dark mist of despair that never truly broke character. I mean, I remember playing this as a kid, and it felt like I was playing something that was meant for older kids. Like I was given a glimpse into this brave new world of what real gaming was. This arena where games were dark and unforgiving, not just fun and gory. I mean, keep in mind, I was practically committing mass genocide in GTA at the same time. But roaming through the wasteland with that iconic soundtrack truly hit different. And it's hard to pinpoint what exactly it was. But I can assure you, it wasn't the fact that it was isometric or had turn-based combat. And a lot of people act as though that's what made the old Fallouts great, when it's just not that simple. What made the old school Fallout games great for me was their delivery. They were serious about the topic. They created a world in which the evils of humanity were presented at the forefront. There was no good or bad, there was just people doing what people do, and you were the judge of whatever you deemed acceptable. The world felt alive and full, and cities felt established, like the world was rebuilding itself any way it knew how. The old Fallout games were just brutal, man. And to perfectly sum this up, I want to focus on one particular instance that has always stuck with me. After starting a new game in Fallout 2 and completing the Temple of Trials, we head out to the world map and come across one of the first towns, the Den, where we come across this building with people locked in a fence out back. Turns out this is a slaver gang, and these are their slaves. Now your first thought may be that you need to help save these people because that's what gaming's all about these days. But what if we could join them? Well, that's exactly what Fallout offers you, a choice. Sure, we can kill these slavers, free the slaves, and feel good about ourselves because virtue and whatnot. Or we could roleplay as a ruthless badass. Join these guys and literally go out with them on patrols, beating travelers with a stick and forcing them into a life of pure misery. Then we head over to New Reno, join the mob, sleep with the boss's daughter and his wife because I don't discriminate, and straight slaughter the Wright family because fucking #reasons. And the best part is we get paid. And that right there is what makes these older Fallouts some of the greatest games of all time. It was about letting the player be who they want to be. Which brings us back to the question: what if Fallout 4 was brutal? But before we can answer that, we need to answer one more question. What if Fallout 4 stuck to the Fallout roots and allowed the player to be who they wanted to be? And to answer this, we need to focus on one of the first big setbacks we see in Fallout 4. The player is predefined. And yes, I mean no matter what we do, no matter which choices we make, we are forced to play as Nate. Even if you choose Nora, you're just a Nate with tits, and that's the way Fallout 4 is. Now, one of the biggest reasons for this is because of the player dialogue, which thankfully Bethesda has moved away from since we don't see it make a return in Starfield, but that's not the only gutter rail keeping us on a Nate path. The next big change we need to make is the intro itself. Oh boy, the dreaded 4-hour Bethesda intro scenes. And while Skyrim is just as long, I think we can all agree that Fallout 4's intro debut is one of the most drawn-out segments in gaming history. Now sure, is it cool to see the pre-war life for a minute? Yeah, of course, but after the first 12 times, I think we're all a bit over it. Not only does this introduction manage to bore us half to death, but it also pigeonholes us into who our character is. A war hero family man who loves his wife and child. Period. That's Nate, and this influences everything from here on out. So let's scrap this narrative novel and turn it into a true role-playing experience. After booting up Fallout 4, we click New Game, and bam, we go straight to character creation, just like the good old days. And we're already in the pod, and once we're done creating our perfect wastelander, we hit finish and the ice falls over us. Cue some epic monologue intro piece that finishes off with 200 years later popped up on the screen, and we awaken to an empty vault with no idea who we are, where we come from, or why we're here. As we leave the pod, we find out we're the only one remaining. All the other pods are empty. We see a skeleton by the door with a Pip-Boy, and as we put it on, we're given the chance to pick our special. We then open the sealed door with our newfound toy, and as we explore the vault, we can read terminals where we learn that this wasn't just a test to see if cryogenics was feasible. Vault 111 was a test to see if humans would sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the species. Scheduled to only open after 200 years, this vault was purposefully only given enough food to last half the journey, meaning everyone inside was doomed to starvation from the very beginning. Everyone, of course, except for the payload, those who were cryogenically frozen. After 1 century, the inhabitants began opening cryopods and consuming those inside, only to find out once the pod is open, it can't be reused. Every single payload was eaten except for one. You. When it came down to the last man, the Overseer sealed himself in the room, using his Pip-Boy as he knew there was no way to survive until the scheduled opening. But one of the side effects of being frozen is a loss of memory, explaining why we're a blank slate. We see the evidence of cannibalism throughout the kitchen area and fighting among the inhabitants. We can read terminals of people forming alliances within the vault, scheming ways to break out. We even find evidence of one group trying to blow open the vault door to no avail. There's a sense of dreadful gloom engulfing the entire setting, and the natural order of Mother Nature reveals herself. We are the sole survivor of Vault 111. Now, I already know what some of you are thinking, but Bickley, what about Sean and the Institute and Sense and our man, fuck the Institute and fuck Sean. We don't need them. Yeah, really though, I do kind of wish Bethesda never introduced Sense, but that's a topic for another video, so. Look, all I'm saying is you need to subscribe, and that Bethesda really missed the mark in some big ways. And if you're still not convinced, then how about this? Take the Minutemen, for example. The one faction that feels like it was written by a 5-year-old watching Paw Patrol. Now, we first meet these guys in Concord being attacked by the Corvega Raider Gang, and our only option here is to kill the Raiders, save the Minutemen, and become their leader because that's just Preston logic. Now, if you don't already know, the Corvega Gang actually has a pretty interesting story, with Jared, their leader, sending the attack order on the Minutemen because he got word that Mama Murphy was part of their group, and he's been trying to recreate her sight ever since she foretold his future when he was just a kid. I mean, I even made a short about it because it's just a cool story. Now, a real Fallout game would have seen this as an opportunity for the player to make their first big decision. Do you side with the Minutemen and bring sanctuary to the wastes? Or do you side with the Corvega Gang and leave a path of despair in your wake? I mean, think about it. We roll up to Concord and come across these guys in a shootout, where Gristle comes up to us and he's like, hey man, we're taking out these assholes, you in or not? And if you accept, then you join them in fighting their way inside the Museum of Freedom. And once you're in, instead of Raiders in your way, it's Minutemen. You fight your way to the top and capture Mama Murphy, and instead of leaving with Preston towards Sanctuary, you leave with the Raiders towards the Corvega plant. And once we arrive, instead of another settlement needs your help, we get another settlement needs to pay up. Instead of building walls and beds and water purifiers at Sanctuary, we're building holding cells and turrets and experimentation chambers at the plant. It's the perfect parallel. Just imagine walking through the lower dungeon, hearing the screams of everyone you've enslaved in pursuit of deciphering the site. Maybe there's a sort of civil war against Jared in which you could become the leader depending on which path you take. And yeah, sure, we got Nuka World, the Be a Raider DLC. But even that just feels like Candyland and you have to pay extra for it. I mean, this is the kind of thing that should just be part of the experience. And you maybe want wondering why I'm even talking about this. Why am I concerned with Fallout 4 at all? I mean, this is old news, right? Well, the problem is, looking back, Fallout 4 was the beginning of a new era for Bethesda. The era of wide appeal. Gone are the days of that dark, gritty wasteland we all fell in love with. Instead, we're given a safe, sterile theme park with bright colors and happy NPCs. I mean, just look at Starfield. There isn't a brutal line of code in the entire game, except for the code itself and some written lore. Or how about Fallout 76, the Fallout Fortnite edition? And once I played Fallout 4 again after all these years, it all made sense. It's as if we've witnessed the rise of one of our favorite gaming studios, only to see it crumble under its own weight as it aims to appeal to the general masses, to this younger audience, completely oblivious to the fact that it already appealed to everyone. The general masses loved it because it was different, because it was brutal. But it seems they've sold out to this we need to be careful mentality. And look guys, I'm not knocking you for enjoying these games. They're meant to be enjoyed. That's the whole point. But it's important to recognize that if we stay on this path, it won't be long before Fallout is just a caricature of itself, a hollow shell of a comedy pretending to be what was once our favorite game. Which makes me wonder, were the old Fallouts just too brutal? Were they too dark? Or were they just right? Let me know what you think in the comments. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to be cool, you should become a member for $1 a month and gain access to all of our upcoming behind the scenes content and maybe some merch. As for the rest of you peasants, go check out one of my other Fallout videos like my favorite Fallout conspiracy or something. Or don't if you want to be lame. Man, fuck the Institute and fuck Sean. We don't need them.